Rokudo was an ugly, disgusting emo reject who was bullied because he was a weak waste of space. However, all that changed when he received a magic scroll which gave him the power to rizz up delinquent girls, who fought over his sausage. Before his life changed, Rokudo received his daily dose of bullying from a boy named Haruya. The cliché bad boy tossed food in the air and made Rokudo catch it with his mouth like a dog while he and his friends laughed at him. When they had their fill of messing with him, they let him return to his friends, Masaru and Kota. Both boys felt bad for his treatment and offered him side dishes from their lunches. Just as Rokudo was thanking them, they heard Haruya's girlfriend, Tsubaki, laughing, so they turned to look at her. The only thing they seemed to notice about her was her thick thighs, and since they were a bunch of shameless degenerates, they kept staring at them. Tsubaki sensed their stares and screamed at them to stop staring at her like creeps. When Haruya realized what was going on, he threatened to cut their baby balls off if he ever caught them staring at his girl again. Terrified, the three stooges kept their mouths shut until they got to the toilet, where they let their innermost thoughts out and collectively chewed out Haruya and Tsubaki. At some point, Rokudo began sobbing and talking about how he wanted to enjoy his school life. His friends soon joined him, but they all stopped when Haruya and his friend walked in. They listened as Haruya's friend suggested he join the Onishima Union, the rip-off version of the Tokyo Moji Gang. He said it would improve his chances of becoming their school's top dog once he got to his third year, and Haruya told him he'd think about it. After they left, Masaru proposed they go to Rokudo's house to blow off some steam by playing video games. When they arrived, Rokudo was surprised to see a package from his grandfather waiting for him. Inside the box lay some clothes, a scroll, and a note from his dead grandfather, which said he was in danger and had to use the scroll because it was the only thing that could help him. The scroll was an heirloom passed down for generations and supposedly had spells written on it, which the Onmyoji used to ward off evil spirits. After learning its history, Masaru suggested that Rokudo use the scroll to fight the delinquents, since they were the only source of evil bothering him. Suddenly, the scroll glowed, and once the glow disappeared, a pentagram appeared on Rokudo's forehead, confusing him and his friends. The next day, Rokudo realized that the mark the scroll had given hadn't turned him into the dragon warrior as he'd hoped. This was because he couldn't defend himself and was beaten up on his way to school by some delinquents who tried to take his money. The boys were prepared to do more to him, but the girl with them told them not to. Later on at school, Tsubaki stopped Haruya from messing with him, so Masaru and Kota suffered in his place. After school, as Rokudo and his friends were walking home, an angry Haruya stormed towards them. He demanded to know what Rokudo had done to Tsubaki to make her use his picture as the background on her phone. Rokudo was so shocked. This made Rokudo remember that his grandfather had said the scroll made bad girls fall for whoever had it. Terrified by the revelation, he ran away and accidentally bumped into a blonde-haired girl, who was instantly charmed the moment she laid eyes on him. At school the next day, Rokudo was surprised to see the blonde girl sitting beside him. Takeru, Haruya's friend, tried to speak to her, but she ignored him for Rokudo. She told Rokudo that her name was Rana and said it was her first time attending school since she enrolled. Before Rokudo could respond to her, Takeru punched him in the face because he was annoyed that he was being ignored. As Rokudo fell, Rana went all She-Hulk and smashed her desk on Takeru's head. This knocked him out completely, and when he woke up later on, he also couldn't remember what happened, so Tsubaki and Haruya helped him fill the gaps. A few days later, when Rokudo got to school, his mark made the girls swarm him like bees, but as soon as they sensed Rana's menacing glare, they ran for the hills. Rokudo had to speak with her and let her know that it wasn't nice to glare at people with murderous intent. He also made her promise not to hurt anyone at school, as it wasn't ladylike. Later that day, Rokudo approached Rana to speak to her but changed his mind after seeing how beat up she looked. When he asked what happened, she explained that some boys had hit her because they wanted revenge for what she did to their friend. He then asked why she hadn't defended herself properly, and she told him it was because she promised him that she wouldn't beat anyone up. Upon hearing this, Rokudo felt bad and decided that he was going to stop acting like Captain Buggy and stand up to the bullies. This made him delude himself into thinking he could defeat Haruya, so he called him up to the roof and challenged him to a one-on-one fight. However, he couldn't help but shake like a busted-up washing machine, and when Haruya charged at him, he attempted to channel his inner Saitama, but his punch was just as weak as his knees. Haruya retaliated by giving him a brain-forming punch that left him dizzy and contemplating his life choices for a while. Masaru and Kota tried to encourage Rokudo, but that just pissed Haruya off and made him recall the time when he used to be bullied for being weak. He then told them that a bunch of weaklings like them had no right to speak to him. But Rokudo shocked him by saying he was nothing but a worthless piece of shit who bullied others. At that point, Haruya was pissed off when he felt Rana's overwhelming presence. However, he ignored her and began using Rokudo as a punching bag. But to his surprise, Rokudo refused to go down. Deep down, he wanted to stop, but the fact that Rokudo, a person he considered to be as weak as a fly, remained on his feet while he pummeled him, irritated him to no end. Eventually, Rokudo couldn't take it anymore, so he weakly begged Rana to help him. And since she was his Wonder Woman, she charged at Haruya, knocking him out with one punch. He woke up later in the hospital and admitted to Tsubaki that Rokudo wasn't as weak as he always believed he was. He also accepted that he'd lost the fight, but Rokudo, who was on his way home at that time, didn't know this, so he kept feeling like a failure. He couldn't believe he'd been so weak that he needed a girl to come to his rescue. The next day after school, Haruya invited Rokudo to eat ramen with him after school and as a sign of friendship. After they left the restaurant, Haruya warned him that their school's top dog, Osanada, was looking for him. Immediately, Rokudo became as white as a ghost. Just then, one of Osanada's minions approached Rokudo and informed him that Osanada wanted to see him. Haruya then told Rokudo that he was going to stand with him if he decided to go up against Osanada, which surprised the boy. The next moment, Kuta and Mesar rushed over to Rokudo so they could convince him to run away. Rokudo told them he was tired of running away like a scared little boy and said he was going to face Osanada the same way he'd faced Haruya. He also said a bunch of other stuff that was very touching and inspirational to his friends, and they both swore to be by his side no matter what. A nearby wall suddenly broke, and Rana stepped through it. Annoyed by her sudden appearance, the boy attempted to pick a fight with her, but Rokudo, the wannabe Superman, stepped between them and told him to back off. The others then went to stand beside him, and Haruya told the boy that Rokudo would meet with Osanada when he was ready, which pissed the boy off. He swore that Osanada would wipe the floor with their asses, and Rokudo bravely told him that he was prepared to face Osanada. Just as he concluded his statement, Haruya informed him that Osanada was a girl. The next day at school, Osanada, who was a half-pint underdeveloped loli, came to Rokudo's class, searching for him. When she approached him, the mark on his forehead glowed, but to his surprise, it had no effect on her, and that made him scared. Just as she called over her goons, Kurakota, she noticed an angry Rana looking at her, so she asked them to wait. Just as the girls were about to turn the class into a wrestling ring, Rokudo got between them and tried to convince them to talk things over. However, Osanada wasn't interested in talking, so she punched him in the face. For some reason, her punch was more like a light tap, so she called Masaru over and gave him a punch that sent him flying to the back of the classroom. Since she couldn't understand why Rokudo was hard to punch, she decided to take him to her base. The base happened to be in one of the school's old buildings and was decorated like a child's room. As Rokudo sat in the room listening to Osanada, he realized that the spell had worked on her, but the only reason she wasn't acting like the other girls was because it was the first time she'd ever been in love. This made him feel guilty as he believed he was manipulating her with the spell. To stop feeling like an asshole stealing candy from a baby, he swore to make things right by turning her into a good girl, so the spell wouldn't affect her anymore. When Rokudo decided to return to class, Osanada surprised him by saying she would begin attending classes again. The next day, just like she said she would, Osanada began attending classes. During one of their classes, the class rep addressed the class on the topic of their oral reports, so Rokudo stood up and said it would be a good idea to observe plant life. The boys made fun of his idea, calling it a thing for kids, until Osanada voted in favor of doing the project. Without any objections or arguments, they began doing the project, and every day, they took good care of the flowers they observed. One day, as Osanada sat in her room working on a report, Kuroketa came to speak with her about their plan to join the Onishima Union. He reminded her that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that would elevate their status, but Osanada wasn't interested. She told him she wanted to remain in school as the past few days had taught her that school was a fun place to be, and then left to attend class. After classes, Osanada told Rokudo she was going to the school garden to check on the flowers. When she arrived there, She met a few of their classmates there, which made her happy. Unfortunately, her smile turned upside down when she discovered that the empty-headed fools before her had wrecked the flower beds during a fight. The boys tried to convince her that it had been a mistake, but Kurokata suddenly appeared from the shadows like Ryuk and told her they deserved to be punished even though he'd set the whole thing up. A few minutes later, Rokudo came looking for Osanada and was shocked to see her standing amid unconscious bodies. He rushed over to her to see if she'd been hurt, and while he was fussing over her like an overprotected mother hen, he noticed the destroyed flower beds. Osanada let him know that the unconscious boys were the culprits, and that was when he realized that she was the one who beat them up. However, he still tried to delude himself into believing that she was as innocent as a dove. Kurokata emerged from his hiding place again and told him that Osanada was responsible for beating up the boys. When Rokudo tried to argue, he told him not to waste his breath as it was obvious that Osanada was a monster. Later on, Osanada and Kurokata met with the members of the Onishima Union as Kurokata wanted. However, the members of the group didn't believe someone as vertically challenged as Osanada was fit to join their gang. They mocked her for being built like one of Santa's little helpers and said there was no way she could throw a punch. Kurokata assured them that Osanada was the real definition of small but mighty and asked that they let her demonstrate her ability. As soon as they agreed, Osanada went ahead to show them the meaning of the word ass whooping. Back in school, Rokudo, who was still sitting in the school garden under the rain, begged Rana, who had joined him in the garden at some point, to help him save Osanada. A few minutes later, he burst into the warehouse where Osanada was and began reading from his report book, while Rana took care of the gang members who tried to attack him. Since Rana was preoccupied, Kurokata charged at Rokudo and began beating the shit out of him, but that didn't stop Rokudo from reading. Rana tried to intervene, but the gang leader wouldn't let her, so Rokudo continued to endure Kurokata's wrath. Meanwhile, a confused Osanada stood watching the entire thing unfold. When Kurokata stopped hitting Rokudo, he walked closer to Osanada and told her that he knew she was a good person. Kurokata told her not to listen to a word of what Rokudo was saying, but Rokudo screamed at him to keep his worthless opinions to himself. He then focused his attention on Osanada and was finally able to convince her that she could start a new life with the friends she made at school. As soon as Kurokata realized Rokudo had gotten through to Osanada, he picked up a pipe and attempted to hit Rokudo. Fortunately, Osanada got in the way, and since her head was as hard as a rock, she wasn't very hurt. Just then, more members of the Onishima Union arrived to help their friends, but before they could attack, the fire sprinklers turned on. Masaru and Kuda then barged in and poured a whole container of wax on the floor to slow them down. While they struggled to get free, Rokudo and the others slipped out the back door and met Haruya waiting for them. It turned out that they found out Rokudo had gone to confront the Onishima Union and had banded together to come to help him. When it was time to flee, Kurokata opted to stay behind and face the wrath of the gang members. As they ran for their lives, Osanada told Kurokata that she was going to give up on her love for him, but said she was glad she got to feel that way about him. A few days later, in an empty parking lot, Masaru congratulated Rokudo and Kata for getting their scooter license. While he was still speaking, Haruya showed up with a decorated scooter and told Rokudo he was giving it to him. Immediately, Rokudo told him that he wouldn't be caught dead riding such a monstrosity, but Haruya told him not to be an ungrateful little bitch and accept his gift. Rokudo accepted it and took it for a ride. A motorcycle police officer began chasing him. She took a swing at him with her baton, causing him to ask why she was acting like an unsupervised lunatic. The girl simply told him that he had some nerve to talk to her, and was about to take another swing at him when the mark on his forehead charmed her. Rokudo then used the opportunity to escape, not realizing that his student ID card had fallen. Later that day after school, as Rokudo and his friends walked out of school, they were stopped by the girl who chased him that morning. However, Rokudo didn't recognize her, and she didn't bother to jog his memory. Instead, she introduced herself as Azami, a student at a prestigious all-girls school, and handed over his ID card. She couldn't understand why she was seeing a low-life delinquent like him as a prince. Just then, Haruya arrived with the scooter and showed off the shrimp tail seat he just installed on it. Seeing the upgrade Haruya made to the already ugly bike left Rokudo speechless. It wasn't until Azami told him never to ride the bike again that he remembered how to speak. He said that he couldn't agree to her request because he wished to go cruising with his friends when the time came. His response was so unexpected that she began to cry, and before he could apologize, she ran off, causing him to feel bad for making a girl cry. However, she soon returned with a bike that had a side carrier and invited Rokudo to go for a ride with her. Rokudo happily jumped in even though Masaru warned him that Azami might be a bad girl. During the ride, the sweet and calm Azami got a crazed look in her eyes and told Rokudo that bikes were very scary. She then began to accelerate as she promised him a traumatic ride that would ensure he never touched a motorcycle again in his life. When she eventually stopped, the first thing he did was throw up, after which he insisted on walking back home, but she told him that would be impossible as they were very far from town. On the drive home, she apologized for her reckless driving and told him that she would be his driver anytime he wanted to ride a motorcycle. Days later, after Azami dropped Rokudo off, he was approached by a boy who asked if he knew the whereabouts of a girl pretending to be a motorcycle cop. He said she had attacked some of his friends and Rokudo told him that she had also attacked him. When the boy showed him the girl's picture, he realized it was Azami, but he pretended not to know her. This was because he noticed the ring the boy wore had the Onishima Union symbol Haruya had shown him on it. That night, Rokudo told his friends about his encounter with the boy and said he was afraid of what they might do to Azami. Haruya told him that he needed to be careful as the boy he spoke to was named Aoi, and he was the Onishima Union's number 3. He said Aoi always appeared cool and level-headed, but whenever he got on a bike, he became a speed demon, chasing thrills and living on the edge. There was even a rumor that Aoi had caused the accident of a motorcycle cop who was after him, and ever since that day, the man had never been able to ride again. The boys became terrified after learning this, and Haruya advised them to stay clear of Aoi. However, Rokudo said he couldn't sit back and do nothing when he knew Azami was in danger. Since he didn't have a way to contact her, he came up with a plan to catch her attention. He and the boys went around town driving their bikes, and since Haruya's bike was the most eye-catching delinquent bike to ever exist, Azami spotted them immediately. When she got closer to them, Rokudo called out to her and told her that the Onishima Union was after her. He advised that she lay low for a while, but she refused, saying it was her duty to get delinquents like Aoi off the street. She then zoomed past them, leaving Rokudo in shock as he couldn't believe that he had been unable to change her mind. Eventually, Rokudo had to do his version of Gru's Steal the Moon speech to convince his friends to help him save Azami from the Onishima Union. The next day, Aoi alerted Azami to where his gang was waiting and told her he was willing to overlook what she'd done to his crew in the past if she joined them. Azami told him that she'd rather get isekai'd by Truck-kun than join a group led by a Mikey wannabe. Aoi said it was a pity that she'd chosen to go against him, but as he was speaking, Rokudo and the others arrived. They told Azami they had come to help her, so Aoi proposed a game of tag. He said all that had to do was catch him to win, and once that happened, he would do anything they asked of him. One of the conditions of the game was that Rokudo would ride with him, and if he happened to fall off during the game, they would lose. Rokudo accepted, and soon after he got on Aoi's bike, the game began and Aoi took off. Azami and the others followed him, but the only person who could keep up with Aoi's insane speed was Azami. Even Rokudo struggled to stay on his bike. Haruya quickly noticed that Azami was the only person who could catch Aoi, so he told the others that their job was to slow Aoi's gang down. He did his best to knock any biker that got close to him off their bikes, but that wasn't enough, so he took a risky decision and sacrificed his precious bike. However, one of the bikers zoomed past Haruya. Masaru chased after him until he stopped him from reaching Aoi, back where Haruya and the cholesterol ambassador, Kuta, were holding down the fort. However, he didn't need to lift a finger because Rana suddenly appeared behind the bikers and began popping their tires with her wooden sword. When she got to where Haruya was standing, she asked where Rokudo was and he told her that Rokudo was fighting Aoi with Azami's help. Immediately, she tried to zoom off, but Haruya told her not to interfere, stating that Rokudo had excluded her from his plans because he wanted to keep her safe. She got off her bike and sat on the road. When he asked why she was doing that, she told him she was choosing to believe that Rokudo would win against Aoi and return safely. Meanwhile, Azami was still hot on Aoi's trail, and she promised Rokudo that she would do everything in her power to save him. She also said something else that triggered a memory in Aoi and made him realize she was the same girl he'd met years ago. It so happened that the cop Azami idolized was the same cop who had been trying to catch Aoi while he was on one of his Daredevil Joy rides. The man had spent weeks trying to catch Aoi, and that had led to the two forming some sort of bond. However, one day, Aoi went too fast and was almost snatched up by the Grim Reaper. The cop was able to save him just in time, but unfortunately, he discovered that Aoi's bike was heading directly for Izami. To save her, the man crashed his bike into Aoi's bike to stop it, which led to him having an accident. Aoi was still too young and cowardly. He got on his bike and ran away. In the present, Aoi cackled like he was high on Joker venom and said the only thing that could stop him or Izami was death himself. Suddenly, he sped up, causing Rokudo to fly off his bike. So he believed that he'd won the game. However, when he looked back, he noticed Rokudo's leg was on his back. So he accepted his defeat and they all returned to their friends. While Rokudo conversed with Rana, Aoi gave Izami a piece of paper with the cop's address written on it and told her to visit him. He then addressed his crew and informed them that Izami was their new boss because she caught him, causing them to groan. When he tried to leave, Izami reminded him that part of the deal was that he had to do whatever she wanted if she won. Aoi froze after hearing this, but to his surprise, she made him accompany her to see the cop. The man was glad to see them, and even though Aoi tried to act like he didn't care, he burst into tears when the man hugged him. A few days later, Rokudo gave Rana a present to thank her for all the things she'd done for him. He was scared she'd hate his gift, but when Rana saw the pink hair tie, she smiled and promised to never cut her hair again. The following week, Horia asked everyone to meet him at a restaurant. Rokudo, Masaru, and Kota were the first to arrive, and while they waited, Rokudo heard the delinquent girl sitting on the table next to theirs say a guy had given her a lame gift. When she mentioned that the gift was a hair tie, Rokudo began vibrating like your girlfriend's favorite toy. He felt that since the girl hated the gift, Rana also hated the hair tie he gave her, and that was why she was yet to wear it. Meanwhile, Tsubaki called Haruya up and scolded him for sleeping when he was supposed to be at the restaurant. She then turned her attention to Rana and asked why she was dressed in her school uniform on a weekend. Rana said she felt comfortable in it, but Tsubaki told her that she needed to dress up if she wanted to get Rokudo's attention. This made Rana start sweating, and when Tsubaki moved closer to her, she noticed the hair tie on her wrist. Curious, the girls asked where she got it, and she told them it had been a gift from Rokudo. The girls squealed in delight and insisted that she put it on, but she refused. Tsubaki deduced that it was because she was waiting for the right time to wear it, so she declared that they were going shopping. Said she was the only one among them with a fashion sense, she offered to be Rana's fairy godmother. Later on, when they arrived at the restaurant, Rokudo was surprised to see Rana wearing a dress. Like a true Rizzler, he complimented her when he saw that her hair was in a ponytail. However, when she sat down beside him, he noticed that the hair tie she had on wasn't the one he gave her, so he asked if she hated it. Rana told him that she loved the hair tie so much that she didn't wear it, because if she did that, she wouldn't be able to look at it. And hearing that put his mind at ease. Eventually, the chatter around the table died down, and Haruya told them that the reason he called for the meeting was because of Rokudo. He explained that since Rokudo took down Aoi, the Onishima Union could decide to come after him. To make Rokudo see the potential danger he faced, he told him about Doji, the union's president. It was widely known that Doji was an ordinary member of the group until it was crushed by a rival gang. Somehow, Doji rose to the top and rebuilt the group. According to Haruya, Doji wasn't the sort of person anyone wanted to have as an enemy. He said they needed to come up with a plan to protect themselves if Doji decided Rokudo was his new target. Rokudo suggested that they meet with Doji and his top officials and apologize for what happened between them and Aoi. He was sure that if they could convince Doji that they didn't want any trouble, he would leave them alone. Haruya didn't like this suggestion as he believed it would make them look like a bunch of wimpy-ass losers, but because the others were on board with it, he agreed. Before classes began the next day, Rokudo and the gang went to the roof to discuss their plan to apologize to Doji. Suddenly, Tsubaki burst through the door and informed them that Doji and his top officers were in their class. Immediately, they rushed downstairs to stop them from destroying the school by apologizing. When they arrived, they learned that Doji and his officers had transferred to their school, which surprised them. Everyone was terrified by this news, but Doji swore they had come in peace. He said they had transferred to their school because they hoped to learn from Rokudo how to become a group that people relied on. During the lunch break, Doji and his people went to the roof, where he told them he wanted to recruit Rana into their group. He also said they needed to be careful as Rana was very terrifying. When he said this, he was visibly scared and broke out in a cold sweat, because he was reminded of the day Rana destroyed the old Onishima Union. Kaori tried to calm him down by changing the topic and asking what he thought about Rokudo. Doji told him that Rokudo didn't strike him as a potential threat, and said they didn't need to worry about him. Later, as Rokudo, Masaru, and Kota were about to leave the bathroom, Reino opened the door. When he laid eyes on Rokudo, the mark activated, and the next thing Rokudo knew, Reino was holding his hand. The way he spoke freaked Rokudo out, so he ran out of the bathroom like he'd seen a ghost. Reino chased after him, which caused Masaru and Kota to believe that the spell was now affecting the guys. When Reino caught up with Rokudo, blurted out that he was a girl and Kazeno was a boy. Rokudo was shocked and asked how she appeared masculine, so she told him she'd use makeup to enhance her features. She said it was the same with Kazeno, and begged him to keep their secret, because if Doji found out, he knew things would end badly for both of them. Rokudo assured her he'd take the secret to his grave, but asked why she chose to tell him. Reino admitted that it was because she had feelings for him, and didn't think it was okay to keep secrets from him. After telling him this, she ran away, too embarrassed to face him. Meanwhile, Doji sat beside Rana in their classroom and tried to find out things about her, but she neither acknowledged his presence nor answered his questions. However, he soon realized that Rana was no different than an AI robot, as her emotions had been sealed away like Kurama, and nothing he said or did would unlock them. Just then, Rokudo walked in, so Rana rushed to meet him. As Doji observed the pair, he realized Rokudo was the key to unlocking Rana's emotions. A few weeks after the Onishima joined Amori High, they became known as heroes because they fought off the students from another school who always bullied the Amori High students. One day, the class rep asked what they wished to do for the school festival, and the students said they were fine with running a yakisoba stand. Rokudo was unhappy with this decision, as he'd always envisioned a school festival to be a fun and exciting event. Rana overheard him complaining to Masaru and Kota, so she asked what he wanted to do for the festival, and he said he wanted to do a play. Immediately, she stood up and announced that their class would do a play for the festival. Everyone was too scared to say anything, but when Doji declared that he supported the play, they all voiced their acceptance. Later that week, Rokudo was surrounded by an all-female biker gang, and because of his spell, they began fussing over him. Rokudo just sat there praying they would let him go, and the plot gods answered his prayers by sending their leader. She introduced herself as Otoheim, and said their gang was called Teen Ryugu. When she mentioned that they were from out of town and had come to check out different school festivals in the area, he invited them to his school's festival. While they were still speaking, Rana called out to Rokudo, and when Otoheim saw her, she rushed to hug her. They then went to a nearby cafe, and after conversing with them for a while, Rokudo learned Rana used to be a member of their gang. The wooden sword Rana always carried around with her had once belonged to Otoheim, but she gave it to Rana as a symbol of their friendship. Rana was no longer with them because the group had to disband after the old Onishima Union attacked them. Otoheim said she had looked everywhere for Rana, but couldn't find her anywhere, and the only clue she found was the news that a girl had single-handedly taken down the Onishima Union. The next day, while they were rehearsing for the play in the gym, the class rep handed out some drinks. Rokudo gave a can to Doji, after which he told him that everyone was getting along thanks to him. When he mentioned that his dream was finally coming true, Doji asked Rokudo what his dream was, and Rokudo said it was to have a peaceful and enjoyable school life. Just then, Haruya called Rokudo over, so Rokudo left Doji to speak with Haruya. Suddenly, all the Onishima members dropped whatever they had been doing and began walking towards the door. Rokudo asked Doji if something was wrong. All Doji said was that peace doesn't exist. The group went to the rooftop, where Doji showed them a photo of Rokudo, Rana, and Otoheim. He then said they were done playing nice, as the time had come for them to make Rana part of their group. Reino tried to suggest that they wait until after the school festival, but Doji grabbed her by the neck and said she had no right to go against him. The next day, when Rana and Rokudo got to school, Doji told them that one of their students had been attacked by Teen Ryugu. Rokudo refused to believe that was true, as he'd spent time with Otoheim and the others, and knew they were good people. He tried to defend them, but nobody believed him because Kazeno walked in with a badly beaten Reino. She said members of the Ryugu gang attacked her. That was all the evidence the other students needed, and they declared they would join the Onishima Union to fight Teen Ryugu. Trying to appear like a savior, Doji offered Rokudo his hand and told him to take it if he was willing to join the fight. Rokudo said he couldn't do that, as he was sure Teen Ryugu was innocent. Because of that, the students whispered behind his back everywhere he went, calling him a traitor. Overwhelmed by this, he fled to the safety of the bathroom like he used to do when he was being bullied. After calming down, he left the bathroom and ran into Haruya, who told him he was on his side. He said he couldn't trust Doji and proposed that they get to the bottom of the truth before things escalated. They then went back into the bathroom stall to see if they could figure out what Doji was planning. Eventually, they concluded that what Doji wanted to gain from crushing Ryugu and isolating Rokudo was the only thing that connected them, Rana. Meanwhile, Rana was alone in class with Doji, who tried to convince her that the only way to stop other students from mistreating Rokudo was to join him and crush Ryugu. He promised to improve Rokudo's life if she did, but Rana got mad and slammed him into the board. When she began choking him, he realized that he could die by her hands, so became desperate. He tried to appeal to her emotions, hoping to say something that would unlock them. Unfortunately, he was unsuccessful until he asked Rana to consider how Rokudo felt. That was all it took to get her to back down and for her emotions to break free from their prison. By the time Rokudo and Haruya got to the class, Rana and Doji were gone. However, Doji called them to the window and told them that Rana was now part of the Onishima Union. That night, Rokudo, Haruya, Masaru, Kuta, and Asanada met in class, and Masaru informed them of the investigation he and Kota did. It turned out that they tailed two girls they believed were members of Ryugu to an alley where they beat up an Amori High student. However, when the girls were leaving, they discovered that they were Reino and Kazeno in disguise. They then apologized to Rokudo for doubting him when he said Ryugu was innocent. Rokudo told them that the only way to stop Doji was to ensure that the Ryugu members didn't come for the school festival. On the day of the festival, the Rip-Off Musen and his group waited on the rooftop, while the other students waited for the Ryugu members to show up at the gate. Rana reminded him of their deal and told him that if any harm came to Rokudo, she could send all of them to meet their ancestors. Doji assured her that no harm would come to Rokudo, after which he asked his officers if all the students were accounted for. They told him that Rokudo and his friends were the only people not in school. Doji had already anticipated they would attempt to contact Ryugu. Rokudo and his friends split up into 3 teams. They communicated with each other using the walkie-talkies that Masaru provided for them. Rokudo and Masaru waited on the bridge close to the school. While they were there, Reino came to them, and she told Rokudo that she wanted to join them. She said she'd left the Onishima Union and even revealed her secret to Masaru, who was shocked. Just then, they heard the sound of motorcycles approaching, and when Rokudo confirmed it was Ryugu, he became happy. Unfortunately, that happiness was short-lived because Reino knocked Masaru out with a kick. As Rokudo tried to make sense of her betrayal, she began laughing like a maniacal madman and revealed that she was not Reino. It turned out that the person before him was Reino's older brother, Amano. Eventually, he knocked Rokudo up, and by the time Haruya and the others found him and Masaru, the Ryugu members, had already arrived at the school. Following Doni's orders, the students led them to the gym and Kawi asked Hando to bring Otoheim to the rooftop. However, when Hando instructed the gang to remove their helmets, they discovered that the people before them weren't the Ryugu members. Who they had in front of them were Azami and the biker gang she took over after defeating Aoi. It so happened that Masaru had included Azami in their plans and asked her to act as a decoy in case things went south. The real Ryugu members were outside and Tsubaki was trying to get them to leave. Unfortunately, the other students discovered them and angrily charged towards them. Otoheim tried to reason with them, but they refused to listen, so she gave one of the boys a factory resetting slap, allowing the Ryugu members to escape. When Yashida tried to stop them, Tsubaki pleaded with her to let them go, so she decided to kick her. Otoheim grabbed her, and the two began fighting. Just then, Hando showed up and threatened to break the arm of one of Otoheim's friends, so Otoheim surrendered. When Rukdo and the others got to school, a sad Tsubaki told them that Otoens had been captured. They heard Doji's voice coming from Rokudo's walkie-talkie. He advised Rokudo to give up as he already had Otohan with him. He also said that Rana had embraced her monstrous side and would never return to him, but Rokudo told him to shut up. He said he would do everything in his power to ensure that Rana was safe and happy. To do so, Rokudo had to make it to the rooftop, but first, he and his friends had to remove the obstacles. The first was the other students who still believed everything Doji had told them about the Ryugu gang. They attacked Rokdo and the others. Haruya was the only person who could fight them off because no one wanted to mess with Osanada, and Rokudo, Masaru, and Kuta couldn't throw a punch to save their lives. Thankfully, Azemi came to their rescue on her motorbike, and they all piled onto the back as she drove through the doors. The only problem was that she drove like a lunatic, and everyone except Rokudo fell off the bike, Hando stood in the way, so she increased her speed, hoping to force him to move out of the way, but it didn't. Hando charged at them, and when he got closer to the bike, he stopped it using his bare hands. He then tried to punch Izami, but Osanada intervened and stopped his fist with her palm. She told Rokudo to go ahead with the others, promising to handle things with Hando. As a way to distract Hando, she began crawling all over his body like a bloody cockroach. Instead of fighting him, she tried to appeal to his good nature and told him she knew he was a big softie. In response, he sent her flying into the row of lockers with a punch as he told her that he wasn't going to betray Doji, because he'd saved him from those who used to bully him. Eventually, Osaneda decided to fight him and began exchanging blows with him until she finished him off with a powerful punch that would make Goku proud if he saw it. Meanwhile, Rokudo and the others encountered Calbi, so Haruya stepped up to fight him even though he knew Calbi was a cheater. Whenever he tried to hit him, Calbi would move out of the way as though they were dancing the waltz. Eventually, Calbi began retaliating and Haruya wasn't fortunate enough to avoid his blows, causing him to fall flat on his face. Masaru tried to come to his aid, but Calbi punched him away, so Rokudo decided to play the hero and save the day. To his surprise, Calbi sidestepped him and went to attack an unsuspecting Kauta, before telling Rokudo that DG ordered them not to hurt him. He said their orders were to make sure Rokudo watched helplessly as his friends got beat up. He also kept saying many other things that made Rokudo cry until Kauta punched him. Impressed by the Fatso's bold move, Calbi turned to face him. However, Horita then broke one of his fingers to show Kuta that he sympathized with him since Calbi had broken his finger earlier. Calbi saw this as his chance, so he tried to attack Haruya, but to his surprise, Haruya punched him in the face with his injured hand. Unfortunately, the sleazy bastard recovered quickly and began punching Haruya until his back hit a window, breaking it. However, Haruya refused to go down as he'd promised his friends he would handle Calbi, so he gathered his strength and knocked Calbi down with one punch. At that moment, the boys ran into Amano on the stairs and panicked, but Rokudo told his friends that he would fight Amano, since Doji ordered them not to hurt him. Amano said he was still going to get his ass beat because Kazena was dead set on ignoring Doji's orders. He and Kuta then charged at Amano. Unfortunately, the loony crackhead used a fire extinguisher on them and they fell down the stairs. With his friends unconscious, Rokudo was all alone, but that didn't stop him from confronting Amano. When he tried to attack Amano, Kazano grabbed his arm and held him back, but he let go of him and surprised him with a kiss on the cheek. Kazeno removed his bow and rearranged his hair, revealing that he was Reino and not Kazeno. Amano was pissed when he realized that his siblings had tricked him, as it was the first time since they were kids that they had gone against him. It turned out that when they were growing up, Reino and Kanzeno always did the things Amano wanted no matter how wrong it was. He was the one who wanted to join the Onishima Union, and he forced his siblings to join the group with him. However, Reino was ready to decide things for herself, so she convinced Kazeno to see things her way and switch places with him. She planned to beat Amano and make him recognize that they weren't his puppets and had rights. As they fought, Amano had the upper hand because he was the one who taught his siblings how to fight, and because of that he anticipated her every move. However, he underestimated her and Reino beat him because she stopped fighting how he taught her and fought how she wanted to. Meanwhile, Rokudo had almost made it to the rooftop when he stumbled upon a corridor where many students were lying on the floor unconscious. Suddenly, someone pulled him into a classroom decorated like Christian Gray's playroom. The one responsible for making the room was Yashia, and she wouldn't let him leave without breaking his spirit. You see, Yashia was a closeted freak, and the only reason she joined the Onishima Union was to find strong men. When she transferred to Amori High, Rokudo's charm affected her, but unlike the others, it made her see him as a strong person. As Rokudo begged her to let him go, she swapped her clothes for some latex ones, and then pulled out a whip, which she used to hit him repeatedly. Eventually, she blindfolded him and set the whip on fire, but she had to rethink and put out the fire before she began to whip him. At that moment, she saw Rokudo as a strong brute, and that made her scared and excited at the same time. When Rokudo realized this, he tried to act all macho and get her to release him, but that had the opposite effect on the crazy vixen, and she began whipping him again. Unfortunately, she accidentally tripped over a bottle of oil and was about to fall out the window to her death when Rokudo saved her. This simple act of heroism made him appear 10 times larger than he already was, and before he knew it, she fainted from excitement. Rokudo took the chance and ran to the rooftop to stop Rana from hurting Otoheim. When he got there, Doji was surprised to see him as he hadn't expected Rokudo to win against his officers. Rokudo tried to intervene in Otoheim and Rana's fight, but Doji tackled him to the ground and told him that he could do nothing because Rana had embraced her evil side. Still, Rokudo broke free, and just as Rana was about to punch Otoheim's lights out, he stepped in front of her. He told her to stop hurting Otoheim because she was her friend and said she would regret it later. To his surprise, Rana returned the hair tie he'd given her as a gift and told him they had to go their separate ways. Rokudo stared at her like she'd lost her damn mind, but Rana explained that she was saying goodbye because she wasn't the kind of person he ought to have around him. Rokudo argued that it wasn't true, but she said that the only time she ever felt alive was when she was being violent. As she spoke, they both cried and Rokudo begged her to stay with him, but Rana refused, telling him he deserved someone better. She then got up and began walking towards the door with Doji, who had a smug look on his face because he knew he'd won. Suddenly, Rokudo grabbed Doji's arm and told him he had to beat him in a fight if he wanted to take Rana away. At first, Doji didn't want to accept his challenge because of the deal he made with Rana. However, he changed his mind when Rokudo instructed Rana not to intervene. When the fight began, it was obvious that Doji had the upper hand as Rokudo couldn't land a hit on him. He kept punching and knocking Rokudo down, but because Rokudo was as stubborn as a mule, he refused to stay down. He kept getting up and telling Doji that he wasn't going to give up. So Doji decided to end things by pretending to break his arm. In reality, he wanted Rana to get worked up and intervene, so he could convince her that everything that happened was her fault. Meanwhile, Rokudo wished with all his might that Rana would stay away as he wanted to prove he was strong. Suddenly, someone kicked Doji away from Rokudo. He was surprised to see that his savior was Reino and not Rana. Reino told Doji to fight her, but Rokudo asked her to stand down, stating that he alone had to fight and defeat Doji. Just then, the others arrived, and as they all stood facing Doji, Masaru explained to Rokudo that he needed their help to fight Doji because they were his strength. He said that Rokudo had helped each of them in the past, and it was their turn to repay the favor. Doji happily accepted their challenge, and as they charged at him, he knocked them down one after the other. He told them that he would not back down because he needed Rana to be happy. After all, she was someone who would protect him. He told them about how he used to be bullied until he started associating with people who were stronger than the bullies. He manipulated them by giving them the things they wanted so they would keep him around and things worked out fine for him. After Rana destroyed the old Onishima Union, he made it his life goal to rebuild it with people who were incredibly strong and could always protect him. Rana was the final piece in the puzzle, and there was no way he would let a worthless idiot like Rokudo prevent him from getting her. He then began beating them up again, but no matter how many times he knocked them on their ass, they got up and charged at him without any fear. Eventually, he became scared as he'd never seen a group so fearless, and he realized Rokudo was the cause of it all. Just as he was about to chicken out, Rana stepped in front of him, causing her friends to stop in their tracks. She approached Rokudo. She told him she was willing to change and begged him to let her remain by his side. So Rokudo returned her hair tied to her, while their friends celebrated her return. The next moment, Hando, Amano, and Kao, he walked onto the roof, and Doji angrily told them to get lost, blaming them for the loss against Rokudo. However, they told him they wouldn't leave and would stay with him to the bitter end. This relieved Doji, so he got up and led them away, promising to give them everything they wanted as long as they protected him. A little while later, Reino and Kizuno enrolled in another school, and Doji rebuilt his organization with the help of his remaining officers. Rokudo and the others went on to perform their play at the school festival, and they were all happy about it. That is all for today's video. Remember to like and subscribe. Also, if you like recaps like this, check out this video over here.